Good morning, CLC. I invite everyone now to just relax in this moment. If you feel so inclined, take a nice, deep breath, filling your lungs with cool, calming air. And as you breathe out, release all stress and tension you may be holding in your body. Release all worries and doubts. And release everything that no longer serves you. Take another nice big breath. And as you breathe out, allow your body to just relax. And allow your mind to be here, now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. In visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass, In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept, knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me. I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or a mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your life.
In 1958 or 59, my mother was working at Columbia University, where she worked until 69. And Columbia has a women's college called Barnard, which is on Broadway. And she was invited with a few other people by, I think, a guy named Harvey Schmidt to come and listen to some songs that they were putting together for what they hoped would be a show. And one of those songs was the one you just heard. And the show was The Fantastics, which was the longest running musical in history, ran off Broadway at the Theater 80 St. Mark's. And so every time I hear it, I asked for that song today because it's a sweet and beautiful song, and it's September and all this, and it makes me think of my mom, and it makes me think of that wonderful show, which was sort of loosely based on the Romeo and Juliet thing, but, you know. Anyhow, that's not what you're here for today, I'll warrant. So what you are here for today is part 3 of a series that has to do with how we see, how we look at things, and this is drawn from some teachings by New Thought women throughout history. And I have a surprise New Thought woman for you today, who you probably have not read because she didn't write a lot of stuff, but I'm sure you've heard of her, and I'll get to her in a minute. But I was reading this week, for those of you who may be new with us today, this is how I start a talk. I lay out 5 different courses of stuff, and then I sort of pick one and go with it. I read an article this week about in men's soccer, professional soccer in particular, but also in other sports, there's this whole move toward mindfulness now. And they're working with the players before the games and at halftime in the games to focus on mindfulness, and they're finding that this is making them better players because they're more focused and in the moment and so on. And so mindfulness is a thing now, and you've probably heard of it. There are apps for it, and it's widely written up. And I think the term may have been coined by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist priest who passed away last year, an amazing individual. But whoever made the term up, it's a good term, yet it's widely misunderstood. People say, well, what exactly is mindfulness? Am I not always mindful? You know, if I'm conscious, if I'm getting anything done, am I not mindful? Yes and no. I mean, we're conscious, and we're conscious that we're conscious, but a lot of the time, we're not paying attention to what's happening now. And here's a judgment. Here's a judgment about judgment. When we're in judgment, which we often are, We're paying less attention to what we're judging than we are to what we're comparing it to. Think about when you've judged people or situations as being somehow lacking or somehow sterling, just outstanding, over the top. You're not really paying attention to the object as much as the subject, the feeling of how this stacks up, we love to make lists, the top 500 this. We got into this in class the other night. Was Jesus the greatest spiritual teacher who ever lived? Well, he got the most first place votes. Okay? Buddha was in there pitching too. Buddha was, had there been a playoff of the top 4 spiritual teachers who ever lived, Jesus would have been the #1 seed. He would have played number 4. I'm not sure who, and 2 and 3 would have played, and then you get the picture, So we love to make these lists. Who is the great, and I get sucked in on the computer all the time. The greatest guitarists who ever lived. The 30, 50, 500. And they never start you with 1. No, they start you with 500. And there are ads interspersed between all this, so it takes forever to make your way through it. And if it's a list of the greatest guitarists, Jimi Hendrix is going to be #1. So it's just a matter of how they rearrange, 2 through 10 or something. But we love to make these lists, and we love to compare things to other things. And we start doing this pretty much in the crib. Well, this meal is better or worse than the last one. You who delivered it to me got here faster or slower than the last time, And we start, and then in nursery school, kindergarten, whatever, all of the other kids start to remind us of other kids. As we grow, grown-ups start to remind us of other grown-ups, and after a while, you've assembled this stadium full of people, basically, in your head, and every new person who comes into your life, you say, well, you sort of remind me of old so-and-so. And while you're standing there reminding me of so-and-so, I'm not taking you in. I'm taking in old so-and-so. So that's like the opposite of mindfulness. And that's why I bring it up. Mindfulness means putting the past aside. We talked about the past last week in remembrance. It's now in the past. That talk is on Facebook and YouTube, but it's over now. It's a past talk. Next week, we're going to talk about the future, but it's not here yet. So we don't have to think about that either. So today we're going to focus on looking around and seeing what we see through fresh eyes. And the series that's coming, here's a 6 card dealt on the table. The series that's coming up in October is going to be called Stay Astonished. Stay Astonished. Because I really think that's what we want. Maybe even more than pretty much anything else, is a sense of astonishment, a sense of wonder, a sense of magic in life, And we can't have that when we're evaluating. Now, there's a time for evaluation, absolutely. I'm not saying put your intellect away altogether. I'm saying don't let it lead always, every relationship, every conversation. Go with the now. We're going to focus on the now, what's happening right here in this present moment. And this is very useful, and like all spiritual practices, I'm not suggesting this 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Just as we love to make lists, we humans, of how things rank, we also love to have things cut and dried. Cut and dried. If somebody says you should do this, then we think, well, if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do that all the time until I die. Every minute of every day. The Apostle Paul said, pray without ceasing, so I'm going to pray without ceasing. And if I can't pray without ceasing, then I'm not going to pray at all. Right? So we set these ridiculous standards of performance for ourselves that we fail to meet up with, and then we give up. I mean, this is a talk often we have in like January, when people typically make resolutions. I'm going to stop doing everything that's bad, and I'm going to start doing everything that's good. And I'm going to start today, and I'm going to punish myself every minute that I don't live up to. I'm going to lash myself along through this process, and about a week to 10 days into January, you give up. And then, kind of to punish yourself or out of spite or something, all of the bad things that you'd given up, you start tripling up on them, you know, and looking down on the people who do the good things, and then you write an article about it. But so we tend to be very cut and dried people. So I tell you this because when you come into a place like this that teaches positivity, nobody is suggesting that we all be just so relentlessly god-awful positive all the time about everything, where we make ourselves and everyone around us crazy. It's how about a little more positive, a little more self-assured, a little more self-confident, a little more trusting in the process than we were yesterday. So for today, a little more mindful of what's going on, without judgment, as much as possible. By judgment, I don't just mean moral discernment, like between good and evil, you know, because most things don't fall out that easily. They have nuances to them. You know, what you don't want for lunch today is not evil. See what I mean? It's just not what you're choosing. So there's a nuanced kind of a relationship there. So I'm suggesting mindfulness as much as possible without judgment, and as much as possible without, how shall I put this, acquisitiveness. Like, what can this do for me? That's a subtle form of judgment. What can you do for me? What can this do for me? What can this situation do for me? What's in it for me? That's not mindfulness, because that, again, is projection out into the future, coupled with a lot of layers of judgment and some reflection from the past, because you're evaluating the usefulness of something based on your prior experience of things. No, instead it's to just stand there and regard it. Maybe like you would with art, although a lot of times we stand there, I'm looking at a painting, and I'm getting from it what I'm getting from it, and then on the wall underneath it there's this little card that tells me what it means. Then I read the little card, and now it's like, oh, I was wrong. Or you hear a song, and it makes you feel a certain way, and maybe you can't make out a lot of the lyrics. Or maybe it doesn't even have any lyrics. And then you learn later on that here's what the person who wrote the song meant when they wrote it. And you're like, oh, I was wrong. So really, in any kind of experience, there's something that's calling us to judgment, calling us to evaluation. Here's what this means. And so there's a koan, a Zen koan, that I love to recite to myself and send out to other people to confuse them whenever I feel the desire to confuse somebody. And it says, things are not as they seem, nor are they otherwise. Things are not as they seem, nor are they otherwise. You can mess somebody up good with that one. Things are not as they seem, nor are they otherwise. Well, then how in the world are they? Somewhere down the middle of that. They are as they seem to me because I'm allowing them to seem that way. You see, I'm having a subjective experience of the thing that is self-generated, cobbled together from prior experience. So they are as they seem and not otherwise, except they're more than they seem. Because everything has an intrinsic presence independent of my judgment of it, independent of my arrival at it, independent of the moment I showed up in front of it. Everything has an independent existence. When I'm not here and you're not here, this building is still here. Okay? It doesn't sink in, it's not Brigadoon or something. It doesn't sink into the ground and go away, right? It's, you know, it's still, you know Brigadoon? Yeah, it's still here, but it's not here for us until we're here. And then when we walk in here, like we talk about all the time, we all have a unique experience of this place. We can all agree on certain things, and we could, if we described it, if we met outside of here and said, let's describe the room we were just in, our descriptions would, you know, they'd cohere, right? But our feeling about it is unique and individual. Now, take this out into the world with every person you meet and everything you do. You see how complicated it can get, which is why it's good to have a spiritual practice like mindfulness, which says stop, stand still, breathe, relax, and just be for a moment in the situation without expectation, without desire. Wow. Without desire, without attachment. God, this is tough for us, particularly Americans, because we have so much desire and so much attachment going on. We want to fix everything up, you know, okay? Or if it's great, we want to freeze dry it and keep it the way it's been forever, because it was perfect, you know? And to release that from our consciousness is a stretch, but it's doable, and it's really necessary. Back to Buddhism for a moment, the famous statement out of Buddhism that I quote frequently is that attachment is the greatest self-cruelty. Attachment and desire. Why? We suffer from this. If we expect things to be a certain way and they don't go that way, we suffer because we're used to getting our way. That's the inner toddler speaking. You know, his fists and his little feet and stuff. It's like, we expect this didn't go. My soup is cold. This is unacceptable. My whole day is ruined. Somebody posted a meme, I think it was Donald, posted a meme a while back, and or a statement or something, and it said, don't let one bad hour ruin your whole day. Isn't that profound? You know, because we do. The whole day is ruined. Have you heard it? The whole vacation's ruined. It rained. Reminds me of that song, Rain on Your Wedding Day. Who is that? Is that Sarah McLachlan? No, Alanis Morissette, thank you. Yeah, it's like rain on your wedding day or a free ride when you were going anyway. The whole thing is ruined. So we blow things out of proportion. Mindfulness suggests just take a moment and be and breathe and accept things as they are. Okay, on to the New Thought woman of the day. She could be the woman of the year. Here we go with lists again. Is she the woman of the day? Is she the woman of the week, the year, the century? Woman of the century. As I said, she didn't write much, but she wrote this incredible little piece, which is, it was published in Religious Science Monthly, February 1929. It's copyrighted material, reprinted with permission of Science Mind Publishing. I have to put that in there. I just ran across this, and I thought I knew everything there is to know about everything, you know? And this just blew my mind. Let me give you a little backstory on this. There is a document called What We Believe by Ernest Holmes. You've probably heard it. It's in the Science Mind magazine at the front. I've given talks on it here. When we get back to having printed matter, which will happen sooner than later, it'll be in there, you know. And it's his statement. He was asked in around 1927 to explain in as few words as possible what it was his philosophy of life was, and he did, as what I believe, and it turned into what we believe. It's not a creed exactly, because you don't have to believe it, and you know, it's not enforced, you know, but it's a summary of statements of belief of this teaching called religious science or science of mind as taught by Centers for Spiritual Living. You with me so far? Well, in our classes, we go through, often, not all the time, but we often go through this thing line by line, and people will say, excuse me, I have a question, or I have a problem with it, I don't agree with this thing here, this line here, right? And I'm smiling at Monica here. And so we talk about it. And we say, well, it's just something Ernest Holmes came up with, and you don't have to agree with it, you know. But let's try to understand maybe what he meant by it, and then take it from there. Why I'm telling you all this. That's called What We Believe. What I'm about to read you is Why We Believe. And you know who this was written by? Mrs. Ernest Holmes. Hazel Holmes. Why We Believe. Now, what we believe, very kind of, it's nice, I like it, but it's linear. We believe this and that, and the one mind and the subconscious and and you can almost hear Ernest Holmes if you've listened to the tapes of it. This is Hazel Holmes, whole different vibe. I'm going to read you the whole thing, and then if there's time, go back over another, couple of the lines in here, if necessary. Why we believe. Every statement begins with because. Because. Because we live, we hope, and we express. Because we feel the vital fires of life. Because faith is potential, innate, universal. Because religion is a natural impulse. Because idealism is the pivot on which life revolves. Because spirituality is the stabilizing force of humanity. Because through meditation we reach the source of reality. Because contemplation reveals the essence of being. Because of roses, moonbeams, and desires. Because of dreams, poetry, and stars. Because of the laughter of children, the singing of birds. Because of sun-kissed mountains, babbling brooks, and laughing winds. Because the odor of flowers is the incense of heaven. Because of God's lullaby, crooned by waves and swaying trees. Because the blue sky is the dome of the real cathedral. Because imagination is fanned by angels' wings. Because of friendship, loyalty, sympathy, and toleration. Because of justice, affability, fidelity, and philanthropy. Because of the availability of our reliant servant law. Because thought, the director of healing, demonstrates perfect results. Because truth is free to all, undivided, impartial. Because of inspiration, caught by the soul of genius. Because of the delicately balanced scheme of things. Because we sense the architect silently functioning within. Because climbing the ladder of ideas, divinity appears. And because love, unanalyzable, is the motivating, energizing cause. Is that not gorgeous? Wow. Wow. The laughter of children. The odor of flowers is the incense of heaven. Who thinks to put words together like that? Flower smells nice. This is the 10th best smelling flower. 3 summers ago, blah, 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 right? Because it's the incense of heaven. We look too far away for reality, something Emerson said. He says, you want heaven? Smell a flower. You want to smell a flower? You know where some are? Right out that door. Right out that door. If they're not fragrant enough for you, go around to the south side of the Learning Center, the front building, the 2-story office building, and there's a rose garden that a bunch of us planted some years ago. And big old roses. I mean, roses the size of cabbages, just these massive roses. Smell a rose. Smell a rose. Some of you actually donated those roses in memory of loved ones. Remember when we put them in? Because we'd had a hard freeze and it took out the previous rose garden, so we started over. Okay, well, there's a sense of heaven. It's not just the rose and the roses compared to the carnation and the carnation. No, it's everywhere you look, everywhere you listen. And everywhere you smell, you know, there's a portal into the transcendent. From right here, leaving from this train on this platform, right here in ordinary reality, right here. That's mindfulness. Babbling brooks remind us of something. They're saying something to us, these babbling brooks. We can't quite make out what it is because, you know, they babble. What's that again? Slow that down. But it's telling us something. It's telling us something. So this is my encouragement to all of us for the week to come, is to shoehorn into your spiritual practice, along with prayer, meditation, visioning, visualization, affirmation, all different stages of one another, really, fit into that mindfulness of just, without seeking change of any kind, just be in the moment, take it in just as it is, and you'll find something was added to you. You'll find serendipity, something greater than you went looking for in the moment. For if God is all there is, if Spirit is all there is, then it's everywhere present. And if it's everywhere present, then it's present right here, where each one of us is right now, just as we are. So let's know together now, one life, one power, one presence, just one. And we say this not as an invocation to call it from whatever it's doing now to come be here with us while we have this awareness. No, we say this as an evocation to call it up from within ourselves, where it has rested quietly, this one life, while we've been busy, occupied with other things. And it comes up like the mortar between the bricks in the architecture of our lives. This one life that causes all things to work together for what we call good. All things working together, unfolding in order, in intelligence, and most of all, as Hazel Holmes reminds us, in love, unanalyzable love. Love that just is. Love that loves us just as we are, because we are, and that frees us to change and grow, but does not require it of us, and will never withdraw its love or postpone it or suspend it in any way. And so right now, right here, we stand at the center of loving kindness, at the center of compassionate understanding, at the center of self-realization and self-actualization as these godling beings that we are. And for this knowing, and the way that it translates itself into form, in a manner most useful to the one doing the knowing, I release this now into that servant law, that obedient principle, that receptive mind, takes it and runs with it, brings it forth. And so it is.
And now, as we come to giving time and our ushers make their way to the back, I want to thank each and every one of you for the gift of your presence, for the gift of the love that you share with us, for the gift of your monetary donations. We appreciate everything you give to this center, because without you, we would not be here, and we are here for you. So with that, I invite you now to say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
Now I'm going to turn you loose into this beautiful fall day, because, it's Texas, it's South Texas, and it's going to be in the 90s again. But mindfulness. I don't think it's necessarily an additional practice, but an excellent way to do any of your spiritual practices. To let everything go for a moment and be in the moment. Simply because I've decided, I've seen the meme, happiness is an inside-out job. It comes from inside. Well, heaven's the same thing. It's an inside-out job. And gratitude is a great way to get there. Mindfulness is a great way to get there. And it's a superpower that each and every one of us have, is to connect with the source of our own being, fill up, because as Hazel, through Jesse, reminded us, there are all of these portals into heaven, and they are all around us all the time. It's up to us to take advantage of them and then bring that feeling out into the world, which means you are literally heavenly channels. Okay? So that is what I know. I know that there is one life. There is one power. There is one presence. There is one love. And each and every one of us live that life. We contribute to that life. We are part of that power. That power flows through us. We are that love. And so I know as we move into this fall season, as we move into our final harvest and begin the preparation for the rest of winter, that we understand where heaven is, that we understand how to get there, that we understand how to bring it out and create it around us, that we each become this walking sphere of heaven. And as we interact with other spheres of heaven, they meet and they meld and they become something so much bigger that we literally create heaven on earth. Because this is our power, this is our privilege, this is our right, this is our responsibility. And so in that love, I speak these words, and I speak them in gratitude. Gratitude of knowing who I am, knowing who you are, knowing that we are beloved children of that love. And I'm grateful for a place that teaches this. I'm grateful for a teaching that teaches this. I am grateful for our ministers, our practitioners, our musicians, of the technology that allows us to spread this to places that maybe hadn't heard it yet. And I'm grateful because grateful feels good. And grateful reminds me that there's more good than anything else. And I release my word into law, knowing that it is done. And so it is.
So it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose
I
it.
trust it.
I trust
I
it.
use it.
I use
And
it.
I love it.
And I love it.
So it is.
And so it is.
There's an eyelash